Our dear friend and Romemu member, Arnold Meyer, Zichrono Livracha, passed away this past Sunday, a few hours shy of his 80th birthday. Arnold was a remarkable human being, imbued with a fierce tenacity to live authentically. He wrote from the heart, and he spoke to the essence of life. I loved him and will miss him dearly. Arnold and I had a rich correspondence, as those who attended the funeral this week can attest. Arnold once sent me a piece titled, "What a Jew Is," and asked me to approve his desire to publish it. I read an excerpt of that piece at the funeral this past Tuesday, but tonight I'd like to share a different story from the same essay. Arnold writes about his experience meeting the great Shlomo Carlebach, the rabbi, troubadour, musician whose music we've used this evening, whose fame became world-renowned, whose shul still exists on 79th Street between West End and Riverside, and who was a rebbe, a teacher for Barbara. And Barbara invited Arnold to meet Reb Shlomo and to be married by Shlomo in Israel. And they went together because Barbara promised him that Shlomo wanted to just throw a prayer shawl, a talit, over him. And Arnold writes about the experience and says that after all was said and done and the entire wedding had been finished, he remembers Shlomo, Rabbi Carlebach, speaking. Hear his voice. And his last words concluded with a bracha, with a blessing. And this was the blessing that Shlomo Carlebach gave to him. And when people come to your house, they should know what a Jew is. And since words from the heart enter the heart, as the Talmud says, Arnold says, his heart vowed to fulfill that blessing. And when one commits to a blessing from a rabbi whose lineage can be traced back to King David, who pioneered a movement to help Soviet Jewry and who could summon the spirit, it was a vow which, if broken, could put one's soul in peril. And so it was up to Arnold to figure out how to build a home where one who would enter it would feel they know what a Jew is. And so he writes, over the following years, I sometimes asked the blessing's meaning from various friends and teachers. And they always inverted the words, they should know what a Jew is, into what is a Jew? Because it was simpler and definable. And everyone knew the answer, except no one agreed with anyone else. Many answers were similar, but none were the same. Some answered in a single sentence, others with a whole paragraph. But in the end, I could only smile and conclude, a Jew is someone for whom nothing is ever simple. I'd like to dedicate my own version of an answer to Arnold's memory. And in this, I'd like to invoke what Arnold's name would be were Arnold living in the land of Israel. His Hebrew name was Avraham. His last name, Meir or Meyer, which means the one who has light, the one who illuminates. Both of those names are significant in an understanding I feel is part of what I think a Jew is. And they relate very much to the unique Shabbat in which we find ourselves. This week, this Shabbat is called Shabbat HaGadol, the Great Shabbat. As we began the service tonight, we spoke about that, Gidulah, it's a Shabbat that is great. That name is the name given to the Shabbat that precedes Passover, 1 week before Passover. And this week, the maximal amount of time between that event and the actual holiday is present because next Friday night, a week from tonight, will be Pesach. Shabbat HaGadol, the Great Shabbat. It was my bar mitzvah, Shabbat HaGadol, 1982. And so I've thought for many years about what it might mean. And I was helped, of course, by the tradition. The tradition has many answers for the name Gadol. Why is this Shabbat called Gadol, Great Shabbat? There are certainly other great Shabbatot. The Shabbat before Yom Kippur, the Shabbat before Rosh Hashanah, the Shabbat before Shavuot, maybe the Shabbat before Hanukkah, the Shabbat before Purim. You get the idea. But Passover has a unique significance. And the rabbis say the reason why Shabbat HaGadol is called Shabbat HaGadol is because back in the first Exodus, that first moment, the Shabbat that was 4 days before the actual Exodus was the day in which Moses had told the people, take the lamb, the deity of Egypt, the God of Egypt, and bring it into your homes and prepare it for 4 days to become what Sharon spoke to, that paschal sacrifice. It is named Gadol, it is named great because it is the Gedulah, the courage that those Israelite ancestors had to bring the dangerous object, the feared object, the power source of their Egyptian oppressors into their homes, knowing that it would bleat, knowing that it would give them away, knowing that they were imperiling themselves. They began the process of redemption. That first moment of Gedulah speaks to what a Jew is. A Jew is someone who, like Abraham or Avraham, is willing to take something that is a false source of power, an inauthentic deity, something that is feared but for no good reason, something that inhibits and constricts, something that limits the vitality and the dignity of what it is to be a whole person, and is willing to be an iconoclast, is willing to throw down the idol, as the Midrash says, in Abraham's journey, or in this case, the willingness of the Israelites to look at their fear square in the eye and slaughter it. And so this Shabbat of this year is a remarkable and fundamental question for us. What is it that we are afraid to bring close and to let go of, to see through, to denude it of its power by virtue of its scary. It's scary to go out of the house. It's scary to imagine life getting back to normal and then trusting that it was and then it goes away. It's scary. It's scary to let go of all kinds of things that we've invested with power and with energy that really are empty. Isn't it about time on this Pesach, this one after we've been through so much, 2 years of seeing through the structures that weren't really solid to begin with, seeing through the games and the charades and the ways that we fundamentally move things around in our lives at great cost because we're afraid of something, afraid of leaving that job, or now in this case, afraid of taking one. Afraid of leaving that relationship, afraid of picking up the phone to call the therapist that you know might help, afraid of losing your identity as a great teacher, any image that you've created, a great rabbi with a big community, with hundreds of people coming and worshiping together and singing song. What's your fear? Name it. What's your false idol? What is it that you've given power to that's kept you enslaved for 210 years or 210 lifetimes? What is it? Abraham. Someone who was willing to look at the thing that is scariest and whisper to it and say, come, you have no power over me. Here's a nice little room in my house. You want to hang out? And the other name, Meir, the one who is illuminated, the one who emits light, which is Arnold's claim to fame. He was a light worker. The second meaning of Gadol, of why this Shabbat is called Shabbat Gadol, is from the book of Malachi, from Malachi. The Haftorah, the prophetic reading on the Shabbat, where the prophet had a vision of a day when Elijah would come. I will send Elijah the prophet before that great day where there will be Heshiv levavot al banim, where fathers and sons will be reunited, where parents and children, where harmony will reign, where reconciliation will be possible. That's called Yom Gadol by Malachi. It's a really beautiful vision. It's not about fear at all. It's about the magnetic possibility of a future that has not yet come to fruition. A future where brother and sister and brother, where family will sit together, where in our own traditional language, we call it utopia. You might call it Burning Man. I don't know. What do you ever call it? Maybe it's the hangout after shul with your friends, the Romemu, Chevra, the people, it's all harmony. Maybe it was, I don't know, Woodstock. Maybe it will be Woodstock one day. In that version, Gadol doesn't mean courage to face what scares us, but the courage to hope in that which has not yet come to pass. To hope that with small incremental changes, we might yet see the day that is the great day. Hope that when someone like Ketanji Brown Jackson is confirmed and that moment becomes a historic moment for each and every one of us in our nation's own original sin, that this is the week that we might all say, in a crazy world, that the first black woman was confirmed to become a chief justice in our country. That's a little bit of that Gadol, of that Yom Gadol, of that great day, of that great light, of that Meir. You know, we have a tradition that there was a rabbi named Meyer. Rabbi Meyer. I used to call Arnold. Is it Rabbi Meyer? There was a great rabbi named Rabbi Meyer who had his own Torah, the tradition tells us. And in his Torah, in the portion of the Bible where it says that the first humans sinned and were garbed in garments of leather, in his Torah, instead of the word or, which means leather, which means leather, the homonym written with an aleph, not an ayin, is or with light. He said they were garbed in garments of light, of meir. Isn't that what happens when Yom Gadol, that great day, happens, where you realize that these skin-encapsulated egos are porous, that you bleed as I do, that you feel as I do, that we are not as separate as our skin would have us believe? How ironic, of course, that our original sin in this country is original skin being forgotten. The skin that is made of light, that is me'ir, that brings us to Yom Gadol, the Yom Gadol v'norah, that great day, where all of God's children will sit together, atheists and agnostics, black, white, green, red, trans, non-binary, binary, cis, you name it, everybody together saying we're all part of this beautiful tapestry that is called the divine universe. That's Yom Gadol. And to be a Jew, what a Jew is in the midst of Mitzrayim, in the midst of the Shmutz, in the midst of the plague, in the midst of terror attacks on Dizengoff, and in Hadera, and in Bnei Brak, in the midst of the suffering and the impossibility of an opening to say, Avraham Meir, we will face what we are afraid of. And we will never give up hope in that Yom Gadol. Sheyavo, that might come. To take that lamb, to take that fear, to take that story on. To be a Jew is to be Gadol, to be big, to hold the courage to face your demons and to not. I wonder how many people, you know how many people? The tradition says that only 1/5 of the Israelites left Egypt, according to the Midrash, 1/5. 4/5 were like, you know what, I'm a little bit that lamb, that looks really terrifying. Did you say lamb? I'm a vegan. Was it lamb? You don't eat no meat? I gave you chicken. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher, came and said, this is the Shabbat, this is the day. Face your fear. Bring it close. See through it. Because Passover, as you all know who are in this shul for more than 5 minutes, know that I've said this every year for 14 years. The word Pesach, the name for this holiday, is absolutely erroneous and misleading. It describes God's action, not ours. Pesach is God passed over the houses. Pasach Adonai. But we Israelites, we didn't pass over anything. We passed through. We passed through the doors. We did the hard work of taking that bleeding, loud fear and bringing it close and sacrificing it and being willing to sacrifice it. And we held a vision in that moment of suffering of a world beyond our reach. A world that we might not see ourselves. A world of our children and our grandchildren. A world of safety and security. A world of peace and harmony. So the answer to your question, Arnold, my dear friend, brother, fellow traveler, and beautiful soul, what a Jew is. So I raise my hand, Arnold. Ingber has something to say. I don't know. And I'm sure there are plenty of people who will disagree with me. But it's Shabbat HaGadol, it's the great Shabbat. To be a Jew is to be Gadol. To face our fears and to dream of a world that is a great world. A big, big world, because it's a big world. Big world. May God give us the strength to be big people in a big world, to be Gedolim. May we have the courage, the strength to usher in this Pesach, Tashpab 2022, with Gedulah, with greatness and largesse. Please rise.